Hi everyone, my name is Nikita Dhawan and it is my pleasure to present my research and lead a focused discussion at the 11th International Conference of Food Studies. I will be discussing India's Gen Z's consumer attitudes towards the purchase of plant-based meat. So we are all well aware that meat consumption has been growing rapidly around the world. In fact, it has doubled over the past 50 years. However, this rapid increase in meat consumption has several detrimental effects on our environment, including the soil, water, and livestock. Livestock production accounts for 15% of all carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide emissions. This concern has led to increasing awareness for consumers on how they can make responsible and sustainable purchasing decisions. One of the popular alternatives is plant-based meat, which uses at least 50% less land and greenhouse gases than conventional meat. So it is no surprise that the plant-based meat market is growing rapidly and is expected to be a $28 billion market by 2025. So far, there have been many studies conducted on how to promote and incorporate plant-based meat in today's setting. However, there are few studies that have explored the Gen Z segment, particularly for India, which is a large consumer market. Gen Z will be instrumental in driving the growth of the alternative meat industry and environmental consciousness in general. They have different values and mindsets than most other cohorts, and it is essential to learn about their attitudes towards plant-based meat. So this is what this research study is focused on. So the research aim was to evaluate the factors influencing Gen Z's decisions to purchase plant-based meat. The specific factors we looked at based on literature review were nutrition, taste, food curiosity, animal welfare, health and safety, environmental consciousness, cost, and convenience. So our research examined two key hypotheses. The first hypothesis is simply looking to understand how important are various factors when Gen Z considers purchasing plant-based meat. The second hypothesis provides insight into if there is a differential price one is willing to pay for plant-based meat based on what is important to Gen Z. So is it more, how much more, things like that. So for the methodology, it was simply, we had an online survey sent to Indian residents from ages 15 to 25, and there were a range of quantitative and qualitative questions. For example, we asked the respondents to rate the importance of the 8 influencing factors on a scale from 1 to 7, where 7 was the most important factor. Then we divided the respondents into 3 groups: non-vegetarians, vegetarians, and a combined group. We conducted a regression and ANOVA analysis based on the results, and we compiled everything. So as for our results, we found that in the combined vegetarian and non-vegetarian group, environmental consciousness, which had a mean rating of 6 out of the scale for 7, was the highest influencing factor, followed by animal welfare. However, it is also important to disaggregate this cohort into non-vegetarians and vegetarians, since they might be influenced by different factors. And indeed, that was true. For the non-vegetarians, taste was the highest influencing factor. And not surprisingly, for vegetarians, animal welfare and environmental consciousness were also very important. Interestingly, convenience, food curiosity, and cost were the lowest influencing factors. These low ratings were attributed to the cultural setting of India. Given that 82% of young Indians aged from 22 to 29 still live with their parents, the purchasing decisions for this cohort is thus still largely dependent on their parents. So that was something that made sense to us based on India's culture. So a second regression analysis assessed how the influencing factors on Gen Z's purchasing decisions for plant-based meat would impact the price they're willing to pay for a plant-based meat burger. So we gave them a baseline of a conventional burger that costs INR 200, which is approximately 2.7 US dollars. So using the statistically significant factor of environmental consciousness, the regression formed a linear equation which predicts the price one is willing to pay based on their environmental consciousness. For example, if someone rated the importance of environmental consciousness as a 6 on the scale from 1 to 7, then the price they would be willing to pay for a plant-based meat burger is 258 rupees, or a 28% premium compared to a conventional meat burger. So accordingly, an individual who is more environmentally conscious is indeed willing to invest more in a plant-based meat burger. And we also notice nutrition to be a popular motive to pay a higher price. So based on these results, we have a number of suggestions for the plant-based food industry based on these different market segments we notice for Gen Z in India. These findings can help plant-based meat companies structure their manufacturing, marketing, and distribution strategies for the Indian market. So in India, we need to consider two separate market segments: the older Gen Z population living in non-traditional family contexts, or independently or a nuclear format, or the younger Gen Z population still living along with their families of origin. So let's start with the older group. So the older Gen Z population in India who live independently of their parents would be likely to consume plant-based meat food similar to their counterparts abroad. Therefore, companies can sell plant-based meat in food formats that appeal to that population, like burgers, sandwiches, something that is easily accessible, and also by highlighting its environmental benefits, since that was important. In the qualitative data, they also highlighted the importance of popularity on social media. So developing a trend of this type of meat would be encouraging for this segmentation. Now, for the younger group, companies need to consider a differentiated approach because they still live with their parents. We found that the low ratings of cost and convenience for the survey can be explained by the fact that most young Gen Z still live with their parents, who are generally in charge of both organizing food for their family, connecting back to Indian culture, where social interdependence and economic support are still present. Also, parents want to maintain traditional food habits, which could inhibit Gen Z's food curiosity. So, these results highlight that Indian parents are a critical market segment that plant-based meat companies need to target culturally. So accordingly, we have two specific suggestions for plant-based meat companies. Firstly, companies should incorporate plant-based meat food into traditional Indian dishes, as they're more likely to appeal to Gen Z's parents. Instead of just offering plant-based meat burgers, companies could offer plant-based meat tikka or samosas, familiar Indian dishes, that Indian parents would be more likely to purchase and incorporate into their meals. Secondly, companies can also market plant-based meat to Indian restaurants to increase their exposure and availability. As exposure and popularity of plant-based meat increases within families, it is likely that Gen Z, who are responsive to trends along with their parents, will explore these new alternatives. Such a strategy would be a win-win situation for both restaurants, who can offer unique dishes, and plant-based meat companies. Now, just looking at non-vegetarians as a whole, companies should highlight the plant-based meat's similarity to conventional meat in terms of taste and nutrition. In fact, marketing by emphasizing the nutrients and proteins in plant-based meat could allow for a premium pricing strategy for certain segments. Based on the consumer's ratings on the importance of taste, nutrition, and convenience, companies could create different profiles for customers accordingly. For example, a potential niche market to be explored is nutrition-oriented young adults and sports enthusiasts. Right. So with rising environmental consciousness and health risks associated with conventional meat, India presents a significant opportunity for plant-based meat companies. Gen Z, as the future decision makers and head of households, are likely to play a significant role in the adaptation of plant-based meat. Companies that carefully consider the various segments' cultural and specific preferences and employ targeted customer strategies to promote their products would be well positioned to capitalize on this rapidly growing plant-based meat market. Thank you.